Hello everyone. I'm using the Hex N More ruler for the Moonbow quilt, and you want to make sure, if you're not using the printed ones, and I find that using the templates easier. The 8.5 hexagon line, that black solid line, is where you want to mark it so that you can do your fussy cutting. You'll get a nice cut. You'll be able to see where you want to position your ruler because it's clear instead of working with the paper. And that fits the 8.5 line on the Hex N More ruler. The next that I found kind of complicated at first until I had to keep reading it to process it was to take that 8.5 strip, and it's already folded, as you can see. And when you fold it, it's going to be at a 4 1/4 height. And if you're using your Hex N More ruler, it's very important that you're going to use it a little different than you would normally use it for this technique. Instead of going on the solid line, you'll need to go on the dotted line. So I've already cut one out, and this is just my practice thing. If you come and see here, what helps me too is I already marked it for my hexagon, so I know I just need to go like a 1/4 more to hit it just right for my diamonds. Okay, so you'll just cut along. When you first start, you'll cut along both sides, and then you can just take your ruler back and forth to cut more if you need to. And you can see how it comes out, like so. That's it. After it unfolds, I'll iron it and then keep it ready to go so it can be cut again. Okay, so this is where it can be confusing because you need half that diamond. And if you look at your paper templates, you're going to see that it's allowing for the seam allowance. Now, my tendency was to kind of ignore it. Oh, half a diamond. I'm just going to come over here and half it. Okay. Well, that's not really what you should be doing. Okay. Don't just go right in the middle and half it because you've just cut your seam allowance away. Okay. So if you can see, that is not matching up with what's on that paper. This right here is wider, so you're going to need to make sure that you're cutting it from the farthest corner to the farthest corner. You can see here from the farthest tip right there to the farthest tip there. Okay, and when you cut that right there, now you have that seam allowance included in your work, so it matches up to that. So when I first did my trial, and my daughter and I were first doing our trial together, well, we cut it right in the middle. I was like, oh, it was half the diamond, and we'd realize, oops, we forgot to include, we were cutting it right there on the seam allowance instead of allowing it to have, we were cutting it right on the stitch line, sorry, instead of allowing that seam allowance. So just make sure you go from the last point of that diamond cut and then go all the way down so that you have that seam allowance and that your stitch line will be happening here and going up there, okay? So that was, I think, was the trickiest part, is to allow the seam allowance for this shape. And then the other shapes, let's pretend like this was just our normal strip to make our diamonds, or my triangles, excuse me. That's the morning. The triangles are pretty much done the same way you did the diamonds if you're not folding anything. You cut your strip, and then you can just take your ruler and rotate it like so to get across to get the triangles. Now I do recommend, so that everything matches up, On the Hex N More ruler, you have this tip here you can use. I also have one. I did the Nebula quilt, so I had all my tools prior. So I actually got one of these called the mini Hex N More rulers, and I will go and trim off all my little edges here, like so, and then everything matches up much better. So I like to do that on my corners. And then I have a nice little vacuum to clean everything up on. Otherwise, you get all these little things all over the place. So you just vacuum it up and it's good to go. All right. Well, have a wonderful day. I hope that helped. I had to really think about it at first for the cutting, and my daughter's doing this and she's using the rulers I'd use with Nebula. So I was just trying to figure out the cutting stuff, and this diamond was the most tricky part doing for me and teaching her. I wanted to add that I do cut the triangles using the solid line. So when it tells you to do the 4.5 triangles of width of the fabric, so you're going to cut 4.5 strips, then you're going to use your Hex N More ruler, and you will at that point use the 4.5 inch black solid line here. So when you go and you put it on here like that, you can see that it is hitting that black solid line. But when you did these for your diamonds, okay, you were not. You were hitting, for only those, you were hitting the dashed lines, okay? So that's, you go and cut these the normal way. You use your ruler, your triangles. But when you do your diamonds, you're going to be using the dashed line.